So sorry, man.
It's all good. Well, I'm glad we could work this out.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your patience. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. How'd sound check go?
We haven't sound checked. Sound checks at 6 o'clock. I have a Christmas package that I'm putting together for my record label,
Okay.
and one of the things is a bonus CD with some live tracks. So I had to just repair a vocal on a live track for the Christmas package for the record company. So
Nice.
there you go.
Totally understand. It's all good. Well, I wanted to congratulate you on your new album, Kasim 2021. Tell me about how this album came about.
You know, I ever since I started working, actually with Hall & Oates in the 90s, and then with Meat Loaf in the later on 90s into 2000s, I spent an abnormal amount of time in the UK, and I became it was like my second home. So any chance I have to go, I'll if I have a month off or a couple of months off, I'll book a trip and I'll go just to see friends and stuff like that. I was over on a little vacation. I have a writing partner who lives there, Phil Thornalley, and we've done a lot of music together over the years. And he asked, this was in 2019, and he asked me if I had been working on any new material. I said yes. He said, well, why don't you play me a couple of things? I played him some stuff. He says, great. So when do we start recording the next Kasim Sulton solo record? And I'm like, I don't know. And he kind of lit a little fire under my ass, and that's how the record started. Once we got 3 or 4 tracks into it, it was like, okay, this is serious and it needs to be finished. It was great working with a producer. I don't normally work with producers. I usually do everything by myself. And it made the process a little quicker, actually, and a little bit more, a little out of my comfort zone. So that's how the record started and finished like that. Nice. With Phil.
Very good. Now, I did get to hear your first single, More Love. And that really is a perfect song for the times that we're in. I do agree with that sentiment. Now, you stated that was the last song that was actually recorded, but then you put that out as the first single. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, we had the bulk of the record was done, and Phil felt that we needed one more track that kind of was right down the middle in terms of genre and tempo and message. We kind of covered all the other bases with the rest of the tracks on the record. So he came up with the idea of More Love, and then we finished it together. And so when it came time to discuss first single with the record company, I thought, you know what? There's a reason why we did that song, and it was because it's a very good indication of what the rest of the record is like. It's like I said, it's right down the middle. So it made sense to me not to release something that was too far one way or the other in terms of just vibe of a song. And I thought that was like, if you heard More Love, you'd get a pretty good indication of what the rest of the record would be like. That's why I chose that song.
Very good. Excellent choice too, by the way.
Thanks.
So what number solo album is this for you? I know you've put out a couple.
This is proper number 4.
Okay.
So the first one was 1980 and 81. And then the second one was in 2014. Third one was in 2006. No, I'm sorry. The second one was 2004. Second one was 2014. Then this third one was 2014. Then this one 2021. All right. Very confusing. Extremely confusing.
Well, you won't forget the year on this one. The 2021 is gonna stay with you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So currently you're out on the road with Todd Rundgren again, playing
Yeah.
back-to-back shows. Now how is that working out for you this time?
You know, it can be a little taxing now and then. I give Todd a lot of credit. You know, none of us are in our 30s anymore, and or 40s for that matter. I think there's one guy in the band who's in his 30s. But in any case, and it's a 2.5-hour show. And there were a couple of points during the tour where we did 3 in a row. And Todd, not only that, not only is it a 2.5-hour show, but he also has costume changes during the show. And so, you know, what do? I stand there and I play bass and I sing background vocals. It's, you know, it's not like I'm not digging ditches and I'm not dodging EIDs in Afghanistan. You know, I'm on stage, I'm playing music. I love what I do. I love who I do it with. And, you know, the hardest part about tours like this is the traveling. The good part is that a lot of times we get to stay in a city, like we're in Clearwater right now, Florida. So we've been here. We had a show yesterday, a show tonight. Tomorrow is a day off, and then we have a couple of days off before the next show. So it's not really that bad. I just convinced myself that it's not bad. Just hearing myself talk about it is like convincing myself, hey, what are you complaining? Don't complain.
Nice. Very good. Now I know the big thing, Todd's getting inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here coming up this weekend here in Cleveland. And I know he isn't a big fan of the Rock Hall. Obviously, you guys are playing another show in Cincinnati, but would you have liked to perform at the Rock Hall with all the esteemed, you know, colleagues and artists that are going to be in the attendance?
Sure, of course, I would have liked to, but I'm not being inducted, and it's not my choice. And you know, what I think of it kind of doesn't matter. I'll tell you what I tell most people who ask me the question. It's always nice to be acknowledged by your peers. So you know, that part of it, I'm sure Todd appreciates. I think that Todd's biggest thing is that the fans are vindicated, and that it is he's very happy for the fans. Would have been nice to perform, but I get it. You know, I understand.
Sure. Absolutely. But you will be coming to Cleveland here, I think, the weekend
Yes.
after. So, you
Yeah.
know, all of Todd's fans, you know, Cleveland and Todd and
Well,
yourself, what a relationship we've had over the years. How can you describe that relationship?
We love Cleveland. I you know, I do a lot of solo shows over the last 15 years, and I'm always in Cleveland, whether it's the Beachland Ballroom or I've just more recently been playing at a place called the Music Box.
Music Box, sure.
Yeah, and you know, I have a fondness for Cleveland that transcends any problem with the weather. I'll put it like that. And I just spoke to someone not long ago about Swingos, the old
yeah, for sure.
And he turned me on to the documentary on Swingos.
Nice. Well, I didn't even know there was a documentary. I have to watch it myself.
Oh yeah. There's a whole documentary about time. That was my first time in Cleveland. We stayed at Swingos, and I remember walking into the place and thinking that this is wild. I remember there were, I don't want to disparage anyone, but there were you know, rockers on one side of the bar and hookers and pimps on the other side, and everything in between.
Absolutely. I've heard the stories that John Anderson from Yes told me a great story that actually Elvis wanted to meet him there at Swingos, but he didn't have the nerve to actually reciprocate that to Elvis Presley. So it's a notorious place. You froze a little bit there on me.
I'm so it's your story because Greg.
Yeah.
Greg?
There you go.
Yeah,
you
I got frozen. You now. So what was the Elvis story?
John Anderson from Yes said that Elvis wanted to meet him in the early 70s at Swingos. And he said he got a note under his door, a really nice note from Elvis. He said he was too shy. He couldn't believe that Elvis wanted to talk to him. So
Oh my God, that's
I'm sure there's all kinds
amazing.
of stories like that.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
awesome. So looking back on your career a little bit, what made you or who inspired you to become a musician?
It's the same. It's the story that's been told a thousand times. I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and in February of 1964, and I said, "That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Wow.
I'm going to be a." Of course, there was no room at that point, and I was only 9 years old. But I just knew at that moment in time, I knew that. It come hell or high water, I was going to become a musician, and I was going to do my darndest to make a career out of it.
Awesome. Now, do you remember the first artist you ever saw in concert, and how did that impact you, if you recall?
I grew up on Staten Island. I was born in Brooklyn, and my parents moved to Staten Island in 1962. So by the time I was about 12 or 13 years old, there was a theater in Staten Island called the Ritz, and this was before radius clauses in contracts. So a band would play in Manhattan, and then whether it was the day before or the day after that show, they would play on Staten Island at a theater called the Ritz. I'm not sure what band I saw there. I can't remember, but I know I was about 14 years old, and I would take a bus to the other side of Staten Island, and everybody played there, from Cactus to the James Gang. Yes played there. I want to say Jeff Beck, Vanilla Fudge. There was so many bands that played at this theater on Staten Island, and that was probably one of the first shows that I saw in concert was at that theater. It's funny too, because I remember going to see Cactus, the band, and Carmine Appice was the drummer in Cactus, and all these years later, he's a very good friend of mine, and I love Carmine. He is just the sweetest guy, and it's something for me as a kid to have been 14 years old and going to see a band like that in my hometown, and then so many years later, I'm good friends with somebody in that band. That's just really special.
Yeah, that's awesome. And he's still out doing it. He's still playing
Oh
with
yeah.
Vanilla Fudge. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So you started your career out a little bit. How did you get asked to play on Meat Loaf's Bat Out of Hell? Was that were you with Todd at that point? Again, we're frozen up
Yeah.
a little bit.
Todd was a year at that, and the project got that demo to Tim Steinman and Meat Loaf doing Bat Out of Hell. But I was living up in Woodstock. That's where the band was based out of, Utopia, and Meat and Jim did not have a band. They needed to put a band together, so Todd needed to hire musicians, and the phone rang one afternoon, and he said, "Do you play on a record that I'm going to produce?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I don't know, who is it?" He said, "That's a guy named Meat Loaf." And I said, "All right, why are you kidding? Don't kid around. It's like, just tell me who it is." And he's like, he got angry with me and said, "Just show up at the studio tomorrow at 1:00 for rehearsals." Click. So that's how I got asked to play on that record. And what a feather in the cap that is. I see it on your wall behind you.
Right.
And and it is one of the biggest selling records of all time.
Right.
And to be one of 4 musicians that created that record, it's a really special, it's very, very special thing.
Now, was Max and Roy, were they in the E Street Band at that point, or were they
Yeah, they
the
were.
studio?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yeah. Mhm.
very good.
As
That's
a
awesome.
matter of
So,
fact, Jim was a big Bruce Springsteen fan. So he specifically requested Max and Roy because he wanted that, that kind of the that over the top Phil Spector-ish wall of sound. And he thought that Max and Roy, well, Roy is an amazing piano player, just a completely off the chart, brilliant pianist. And Max is a very, you can tell Max is playing drums. And it was just between Max, Roy, myself, and Todd, the four of us recorded all those basic tracks from top to bottom on the entire record in a week and a half.
wow,
About 10 days.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So you ended up, you toured with Meat Loaf, right? Did you tour with Meat? Or not then. You were
I started working with Meat Loaf in 1993, just before
okay.
Bat Out of Hell 2.
Right.
And then I wound up staying with him for the next 17 years, 10 of which, or no, more than 12 of which I was his musical director.
Very good.
Yeah.
So in the 80s there, you ended up with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. You ended up being a Blackheart for a few years. How did that come about?
My good buddy, who I grew up with on Staten Island, a guy by the name of Tommy Price, was a very, very sought after session drummer and live drummer in the New York area. Tommy was playing with Billy Idol at the time. He had just finished working with Willie DeVille, and then he was playing with Billy. And that gig ended, and he was kind of bouncing around New York, and everybody was using Tommy Price on drums for their sessions. When it came to a certain genre of music, Tommy was the go-to guy, and Joan needed a bass player. Their bass player had just left. And Tommy called me and he said, "Do you want to come in and play on a Joan record with me? I'm doing some sessions with Joan. I'll put your name out there." I said, "Yeah, sure. I'm not doing anything." That wound up being a little more than 3-year gig for me with Joan, which I completely had the best time with her. I love Joan. I loved working with her. She's a real trip, and I'm real happy that I did that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Preparing for this interview, I went back and watched the "I Hate Myself for Loving You" video.
Yeah.
And everyone's all in their leather and fringe and big hair, but you
Big
weren't,
hair,
though.
big hair, big sound. Yeah.
Yeah, but you just had the vest on. It was like you just kind of were a little bit more
I look
low
like
key.
I look like a bartender. The only thing that was missing was the garter on my arm.
That's true. That's true, man. I haven't seen that in years, so that brought back some memories for me as well. And then, so I was reading, obviously doing some research here. What was your experience with Cheap Trick? Did you tour with them, or did you play with them on a studio record? I couldn't quite find it.
So Steve Walsh from Kansas,
right,
was their quote unquote utility guy, which means that you're playing keyboards and singing backgrounds on stage. And Steve left. I think Kansas was like getting ready to go out again after being after an extremely long hiatus. And Rick got in touch with me because we've been friends. Rick, Robin, and I, and Carlos, Bunny, and Tom have been friends. Cheap Trick used to open for Utopia.
Oh, wow.
Before they became hugely successful, they opened a few shows for Utopia. And Rick said, I know that you play a little bit of keyboards. Do you want to come out on the road with us for a minute? And I was like, absolutely. So it was only about maybe 3, 4, 5 months, something like that. So I played keyboards and sang backgrounds.
Okay. All right. Very good. That's good, because I wasn't quite sure. So you mentioned being on the road. It seems like you're with one band, you're with BOC and Rundgren, whatever.
Yeah.
How did you handle this past year and a half? Obviously with your new album, but how did you handle not being on the road for such a period of time?
It wasn't that bad. I certainly kept myself busy trying to finish off my record, trying to, do whatever it was that needed to be done on whatever song we were working on. So I was kept busy, and I also did a few live shows. I did a couple of drive-in concerts.
Okay.
I played up in New Hampshire at one of the first drive-in concerts in the country, and that was very strange. Having people sit outside of their cars, and instead of applause, they would honk their horn.
Right.
And then I did a couple of other shows. One show I did in Annapolis at a place that I play all the time called the Ram's Head. There was actually plexiglass between the stage and the audience.
Wow.
There were these huge plexiglass sheets that they put in front of the band, in front of the stage. So that was strange. It was a little disconcerting, but I was just happy to do shows. I was really happy that I was out performing again, and slowly but surely things are getting back to somewhat normal now.
That's right. Yeah,
But I
thank
kept
goodness.
busy. Yeah.
Nothing like live music. You got to have. I went to one of those drive-in shows too. Not yours. I saw the Struts. They played out in Pittsburgh, and it was the same thing. I mean, it was great hearing live music, but yet there was a little disconnect with the honking the horns and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
and it's one thing when you're on stage, if I'm playing an amphitheater or an arena, you're a good 50 feet away from the first person in the audience, but then there's a sea of people out there, assuming that you're selling tickets, and with the drive-in concerts, there's at least 50 feet between you and the first set of cars, and it was a little weird. I mean, I get it. People really, they were just hungry for live entertainment, and I'm glad that I could be a part of something that provided that service. But boy, I would hate for it to happen again.
Oh,
I
yeah.
tell you, once was enough.
Exactly. We lived through it, and let's move on, right? For sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I did want to ask you real quick, your experience with the new cars when you guys went out with Todd and Elliot and Greg. What was that experience like? Because I heard, I didn't see the show, but I heard that you actually sang Drive on that tour.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there were certain amount of songs that were not Rick songs, that Todd was singing all the Rick songs, and I sang some of the Ben songs. So it just happened to work out that I sang Drive, and that whole experience was really, really cool. Unfortunately, Elliot hurt himself really kind of like a couple of 3 weeks into a big tour, and we had built up all this momentum and all this press and all this media, and then like I said, about 2.5 to 3 weeks into the tour, Elliot had an accident on a bus where bus stopped short. He wound up breaking his collarbone, and we had to shut down for about 6 weeks until he recovered, and it was just it just took all the wind out of our sails. So while everybody had really, really high hopes for that particular incarnation of the Cars, unfortunately, it was doomed to never to take off again, because once you lose that momentum, it's nearly impossible to get it back.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So you're out with Todd. How much more? I'm not sure where you are on this tour. It started in October, just beginning of the month, or?
Yeah, well, we started. Our first show was October 1st, so we are just over halfway through. We have about another 3 weeks to go, and then we wind up finishing in San Francisco at just about a week before Thanksgiving. So I think November 17th is our last show in San Francisco.
Now, do you have any solo dates planned after you get off of this one?
Right now, I am putting a tour together for March of 2022. And I'll be doing some Utopia music, and whether it's Kasim Sulton's Utopia or partially that and partially my my album. But before that, nothing really, nothing of note before that.
Okay, very good. Well, hopefully you'll have a Cleveland date on that March.
I'm sure I will. I'm sure I'll have a Cleveland date.
All right, very
sometime
good.
in March of 2022.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to that. I did also hear that you're doing the David Gilmour tour as well.
Yeah, yeah. That. How could I have forgotten that? That is supposedly happening in January.
Okay.
And I shouldn't even say supposedly. That's happening in January.
That's right.
So, is there a Cleveland date?
I think you're at MGM. I believe so.
Is that in
Northfield Park?
Yeah, the casino.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And which is where I am with Todd.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, very good.
So there you go. I will be there in January.
Awesome. Well, I get to see you a couple times. That's
okay,
fantastic.
Good.
So good. Well, Kasim, thank you so much for your time. I wish you well on the tour and with the new album.
Yeah, thanks so much, Greg, and thanks for your patience. I really appreciate it. I'm so sorry that 3 o'clock didn't work, 4 o'clock didn't work out, at 3 o'clock, whatever it was.
Well, it worked out now, so it's all good. All right. Well, I think you're frozen up again. No, that's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But
if you very good. Well, again, I think you're frozen, but
I'm cutting in.
There you go.
There you go.
All right. Well, I will talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Safe travels.
Okay. Thanks.
Next week.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you very, very much.
You got it. All right.
And
have a good day. See ya.
Bye.
Bye. And